says talking out loud, you know? Okay, this is my little talk session of talking out loud. I like to talk out loud. When I'm talking out loud, I can think. I've been pondering, I thought about owning an RV, like, since the early 2000s. I saw a documentary that some old campers, vintage campers that were really nice, and restored. But I started thinking of RVs as, tiny housing options, tiny homes. In tiny homes, in 1998, I can't answer the side chat. I have to drive right now, so beware of that. In 1998, I built a shed in my mom's backyard and lived in it for a little while. It was like a tiny house back then. So even if you don't live in it full time, camping is a way to get away from people. My desire to be a reclusive person, to live reclusively, my desire to live reclusively, to be a reclusive person, to live reclusively, get away from it all, get away from people, associate with my friends, people on YouTube. But as far as being out and amongst the society, I worked in a grocery store for a long time, and there's a lot of criminals out there on the streets that roam the streets. There's a lot of criminals that roam the streets, And the hope, a lot of people, I was reading an article online that said, a lot of people become more reclusive because maybe they've been a victim of a crime, They've been a victim of a crime or whatever. People just don't feel safe out on the streets. People want to be reclusive because they don't feel safe on the streets. They don't feel safe out in public for some reason, People that don't feel safe out in public for some reason. That's part of it. If you don't feel safe out in public, you could be someone who really wants to be out in public and walk up and down the street like there's nothing to it, Some people want to walk up and down the street like there's nothing to it, big crowds of people, and not be bothered. Other people, some people walk down the street like there's nothing to it, and other people just don't feel safe out on the street, Hey there, DTM. Good to see you living in 1972 Shasta. 16 feet, that's awesome, DTM. I'm happy for you. Main thing is, DTM, is that a camper like that, or a travel trailer, tiny RV. RVs can be tiny houses, tiny homes. That's one good thing about mountain people. You think about Appalachian people and mountain people. Mountain people do a lot of improvising. Mountain people do a lot of improvising. They improvise, you know what I'm saying? Mountain people do a lot of improvising. They improvise. They improvise. Mountain people do a lot of improvising. They make stuff work. If somebody lives out in the woods in the mountains somewhere, they might take a Winnebago. DTM and put a pot-belly stove in an old Winnebago. I've seen that. I heard of that being done. You put a pot-belly stove in an old Winnebago in the woods, man, and live there. There are hermits, man, and hermits in the woods. And I admire these hermits in the woods. I do admire these hermits. They go up in the woods, they get an old Winnebago, put a pot-belly wood stove in a Winnebago, live there, There's a story in Canada, a man named Willard Kitchener McDonald. He was drafted into World War II and didn't want to fight in World War II. He was a deserter, and he was young, and he went into the woods. He built a tiny log cabin And it was no bigger than a truck camper, DTM. It was no bigger than my truck camper. It was no bigger than my truck camper. And his name was Willard Kitchener McDonald, the Hermit of Gully Lake. And it was 6 foot by 8 foot wood log cabin with an old wood stove in it. He lived in that tiny house for 60 years. He lived in 60 years in that tiny house. Somebody needs to write a book about that, about him. A good, nice, long, in-depth book, you know. I know there's a documentary called The Hermit of Gully Lake, and it's online. And just to get away from it all, Christopher McCandless. He didn't succeed. You know, Chris McCandless failed. He didn't succeed because he starved to death in the woods. Christopher Knight was the hermit, the North Pond hermit, and Street Life. You know, Street Life. He's from Maine, and he's heard of the North Pond hermit. You know, he's heard of the North Pond hermit. Christopher Knight. You know, but basically, tiny houses, tiny homes is more connected to the prepper community than to the nomadic community. And people like DTM that lives in the Shasta camper, you know, people that live in campers sometimes travel and sometimes they don't travel. Basically, if you have a big RV and it uses a lot of gas and you're going to travel back and forth from one end of the country to the other, that's expensive living. That's not cheap living. Just like Bob Wells talks about cheap RV living, you know. Cheap RV living is not traveling a lot. Maybe you can travel every now and then with your RV, but, you know, you can go to Quartzsite or you can go to Slab City. You can stay in one place for long periods of time in the desert, you know, in the Quartzsite area and not really go anywhere much. You know, that's what I would rather do. I would rather be like those people. And if I stay in my camper some in my mom's backyard, I'm happy. I'm happy being in my mom's backyard. I'm happy here. I'm happy there. You know, stay with my mom's backyard and hang out with my mom and help her and be in the house sometimes. I'll be in my camper sometimes too. And do some boondocking, you know, do some boondocking. As the Madison County Sheriff. See, they're having a Halloween bash right there. So, yeah. But that's what I'm saying. This is a little downtown Richmond. But basically, you know, the nomadic life, you don't have to just be a nomadic person and travel all the time. I mean, people live in RVs so they can travel all the time. But sometimes people live in RVs because they want to live tiny, you know? They want to downsize. And like I said, RVs can be like Rosie O'Kelly has the Shine Shack on her property. And Blackbird lives in the Shine Shack, you know? I mean, if you have a camper in somebody's driveway or in somebody's backyard and you spend time in it sometimes, or a lot of the time, or a little of the time, or whatever, you're in your camper on someone else's property. You know, you can be on the property and bathe in the house and take care of yourself in the house, but it can be like a Shine Shack, you know? You know, that kind of thing. You don't have to just be out on the road all the time. You know, if I'm going to boondock on the streets, I really want to find a place to boondock where I'm safe, you know? I don't want to have to interact with people hanging out on the streets. I don't want to interact with people that hang out on the streets. I don't really care nothing about it. I don't care anything about hanging out on the streets, to be honest. It's just not my thing, you know what I'm saying? I don't care anything about hanging out, meeting people that hang out on the streets. I mean, I let other people do that. Rosie O'Kelly and those people meet these these hood rats and all this stuff, man. I don't care anything about meeting these people. I don't care anything about it. I just want to live tiny, you know? I just want to, I work at a job. I'll be having a job in the future. Working at a job, but having a sense of freedom. Not just being an RVer, but maybe, if you can live in a mobile home and live cheap in a mobile home or a house, you can live in a house or a mobile home, basically prepper community. prepper community. You know what I'm saying? Prepper community. Maybe switching over to the prepping community. Prepping and preparing, you know? Being self-sufficient. Off-grid, maybe, you know? Off-grid, self-sufficient. Self-dependent, self-reliant. Working on your own car. Fixing your own cars. That's a good way to be a prepper. It's about fixing your cars. You know, you fix your cars as a prepping type person. Basically, you're depending on other people less, you know? You're dependent on public service and other people less. Instead of having a mechanic to do something for you, or someone to do stuff for you. People sometimes that travel in RVs or live in houses, they constantly have to depend upon other people to do things for them. Constantly depending on someone else to do something for them. You know, the point of prepper is to be self-sufficient, you know, depend upon other people less. And the less you have to depend on other people, the easier life will be, you know. Being self-sufficient, even living in a house is self-sufficient. If you have a house, you can rent out rooms in your house to people. Just basically a simple life. That's basically what it means. A simple life, no matter what you live in. Whether you live in an RV or a trailer or a mobile home or a house or apartment or a rented room, or even a log cabin in the woods, either way, you're becoming more dependent on yourself and less dependent on society, people, you know. And, you know, if you don't want to deal with people on the street, you know, if you don't want to deal with people on the streets, you know, you can find a way to be in an RV or in a house without dealing with people on the streets much. Boondocking on the streets is fine. I just don't want to deal with people on the streets. I just don't want to deal with people out on the streets. I just don't want to deal with them. I don't want to interact with people that, you know, if I think that somebody could mug me or something, I don't want to be out amongst people that can mug me. You see what I'm saying? There's people out there that mug people. There are people on the streets that mug other people. They rob people, you know? I don't want to get robbed or mugged. I want to be safe. You know what I'm saying? There's just no guarantee that you won't get mugged. There's no guarantee that you won't get attacked. There's no guarantee you won't have your, you know, whatever to happen. You know, some anonymity is good to be anonymous. Some anonymity is good to be, as a travel trailer. Some anonymity is a good thing. To be somewhat anonymous somehow is a good thing. If people, the more you draw attention to yourself, the more of an attention getter that you are, the more likely you are to be a victim of something on the streets. If you look different and you stand out on the streets, then you're going to be a target because you stand out. You see what I'm saying? If you stand out a lot, you're going to be a target because you're, for a crime if you stand out. If you blend in as an ordinary Joe, just a face in the crowd, who's going to do something to you? That's a degree of security in your anonymity, you know? That's why I don't put bumper stickers on my cars, people. I don't put bumper stickers on my cars. I don't put bumper stickers on my cars and all this political stuff on my car, man. All these political bumper stickers on my car and all this stuff, man. I want to have some anonymity. I want to be somewhat anonymous on the streets. When I'm driving in my vehicle, I may drive an RV, and people may look twice because that's an RV. What are they doing on the streets in an RV? I mean, but the fact is, I would try to go places and boondock on the streets of the city where there are other RVs at. See what I mean? I would park where there's other RVs. I wouldn't park where there's no RVs at. I would try to find a place on the street where there's RVs parked, buses, vans, you know, or something, you know. You know, I would try to find a place where there are buses or RVs parked at. You know. I would try to find a place where there's RVs at. So that's what I would try to do. You know, just basically the idea of anonymousness, you know. Less likely to be a victim of a crime, you know. And stuff like that. So yeah, but like I'm saying, prepping, I mean, everybody's out. You see, on days like friggin' Halloween, everybody's out on the damn streets all the time. Everybody's out everywhere doing stuff. It's Haddonfield, Illinois, man. Haddonfield. Tonight we're gonna watch the 2015 or 2016 Halloween movie. It's not this movie Halloween Ends. It's the one that came right before Halloween Ends. Right now in the theaters we have Halloween Ends. Right now, Halloween Ends is in the theaters. Halloween Ends is out on the theater. Halloween Ends is out on the theater. Wood stove is a nice thing to do. Land in Alaska is a tiny cabin for summers, and it's another good thing to do. Roddy, motorhome life because normal life sucks. Hey, that's a good motto, Ronnie Braun. Yeah, I'd like to go there too. Yeah. Okay, I'll let you guys in. I'll let you guys go. I'm at Wayne's now. I'll see you later. Thank you, DTM, for coming. Thank you, Ronnie Braun. We appreciate you guys. Thank you for coming. We'll catch you guys later. Have a good, have a nice and safe Halloween. Bye.